Presently, I'm faced with photo after photo of the two of us. They seem almost to belong to someone else, to be artifacts of another life, another age. It is only by slow and careful study of them that I can convince myself that, once, I knew the beautiful young woman in these photographs. Were someone to ask me, who was Annika Hallinan, I'm not sure that I'd be able to proffer an adequate answer. She was my wife, of course. She was studying to become a teacher like me. She was the single most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and rest assured this judgment isn't mere bias or the tint of a rose-colored lens. Annika was all of these things, and much more. Sometimes, though, especially when it's been a long while since I've taken the photos down from the shelf, I begin to forget what she looked like, what her laugh was like, how she carried herself. I even begin to doubt whether she really existed. In some respects, all these years later, Annika Hallinan is chiefly an idea to me, something I'm half sure I invented. You see, the trouble with Annika is that the greatest impression she left on me was not connected to something that she said or did in life, but rather to certain things I discovered about her only after her untimely death. Chapter 2. I had only been a month on the job when my supervisor at the university came to me with a big ask. A state school in our area had been looking for speakers who might be willing to talk about the postmaster's hiring process and the realities of going from student to teacher. As a newly minted associate professor of English, I was a perfect candidate, and my boss asked me to give a talk on the subject as a favor to one of his friends at the neighboring institution. I was eager to prove myself to the administration, and agreed. On rather short notice, I put together a detailed speech about my experiences and watched the days fall away with dread as the date of the presentation approached. Lecturing dozy college students in accordance with a set curriculum was one thing. Speaking on my own educational and professional journey with other professors in attendance was quite another. Because of this gnawing dread and my fixation on the calendar, I still clearly remember the date of said talk all these years later. August 18th. I remember it, too, because it was the day I met Annika Hallinan for the first time. My fears of crashing and burning in front of a hostile crowd went unrealized, as the presentation turned out to be poorly attended. In total, fewer than 30 people showed up, and less than half of these stuck around for the post-speech Q&A. None of the lingerers bothered to raise their hands when I opened the floor to questions, save, that is, for one. Seated in the second row of the lecture hall was a young student with long, raven-colored hair tied back in a glossy braid. She wore a thin, salmon-colored sweater with a black skirt, and on account of her fidgeting had shed one of her dark ballet flats to reveal cherry-red nail polish on her toenails. She had spent almost the entire duration of the presentation taking fastidious notes, and even from the podium, I couldn't help but admire the neatness of her tight, flowing script. The concept of love at first sight is a tired one, but this young woman certainly had a face one could fall in love with in an instant. She possessed striking green eyes framed beneath two midnight-colored brows, the gentle slope of her ears studded with simple gold earrings, and the pleasing curvature of her nose made for alluring features. But it was the heart-rattling pull of her smile, housed between two plump red lips and stocked with a battery of perfect white teeth, that really stood out to me. It was all I could do as I lectured not to stare at her. Though the exact questions she asked have been lost to time, I remember being struck at her earnestness, at her intense interest in the subject matter. Her studious bearing was irresistibly endearing to me, and she kept lobbing questions till nearly every other attendee had packed up and gone. I had begun to put my materials away and was planning to return to my studio apartment when the young woman came up to me and introduced herself as Annika Hallinan. She thanked me for my patience and admitted that she still had numerous questions to ask about the realities of teaching. She was, she explained, 2 years off from obtaining her master's, and was eager to learn everything she could about landing a good university job. Her ultimate